The first light of dawn touched the horizon of Terra 9, a human colony world far from Earth. The sky was painted in shades of red and gold, and for a moment the world looked peaceful. Farmers rose from their beds, preparing for another day of work, and children stirred in their homes. Everything seemed calm until it came the cry. It started as a low hum, rising from the distant hills. Within seconds it became a piercing sound that carried across the plains. It was not like the call of an animal or the sound of wind moving through trees. It was sharp and heavy, filled with something strange, as if it carried both warning and pain. Birds scattered into the sky, frightened, and livestock ran from their pens. The people of the village rushed outside, looking up at the sky in fear. Mothers covered their children's ears, while old men shook their heads, whispering that such sounds never came without reason. Soldiers stationed at the outpost ran to their posts, scanning the horizon for movement. Among them was Daniel, a young scout of the colony guard. He had sharp eyes and a strong heart, and he had always trusted his instincts. When he heard the cry, his body froze for a moment. He knew it was not the wind and not an animal. It was a signal of something unknown. Daniel remembered the strange signs he had noticed during his patrols in the forest over the past week. Broken branches too high for any animal, marks on the ground that looked like footprints yet not quite human, and an uneasy silence that had fallen across the woods. He had reported it to his commander, but his words were dismissed. Now, as the cry spread through the morning air, Daniel felt a cold certainty whatever had left those signs was closer than anyone thought. The commander of the outpost, a stern man named Rowan, stood on the wall with his men. He raised his voice so all could hear. "Stay sharp. We do not know what this sound means, but it is not natural. Scouts, prepare to ride. We need to know what lies beyond the forest." Daniel tightened his grip on his rifle and checked his gear. His heart was steady, though his mind raced with questions. What creature could make such a sound? Why now, at dawn, when the world was most silent? As the soldiers prepared to move, the colonists gathered in the square, whispering. Some said it was the call of spirits, others claimed it was a warning from the old lands. A few feared it was a sign of attack from the stars, for Terra 9 was close to the routes of alien ships. The colony had always lived in quiet, far from the wars of empires, but no one could ignore the growing unease. Daniel mounted his vehicle and joined the small scouting party. They rode out past the village and into the fields, following the trail of the sound. The morning sun was brighter now, casting long shadows over the land. The sound had faded, but its memory hung in the air like a weight. They reached the edge of the forest, where the trees rose tall and dark. The silence there was heavy. Even the wind seemed afraid to move the leaves. Daniel dismounted and crouched low, studying the ground. There were prints in the soil, fresh ones. They were long and narrow, with shapes that suggested a being taller than a man yet still walking upright. His heart beat faster as he traced the path with his eyes. Rowan stepped beside him and frowned. "Not animals. Not ours. Whoever they are, they were here at dawn." Daniel stood, his rifle ready. He felt the forest watching him, as if unseen eyes followed his every step. His instincts told him the cry was not just a sound. It was a message, a call sent out by someone or something that was near. The scouts moved deeper into the forest, careful and alert. Branches cracked under their boots, and every sound seemed too loud in the silence. After a while, they came to a clearing. Daniel froze when he saw what lay ahead. Pieces of cloth hung from a branch, torn and dirty. Nearby, ashes marked the remains of a fire. Whoever had been here had left in a hurry. Rowan ordered the men to spread out. Daniel walked toward the ashes and knelt beside them. He touched the ground and felt the heat still rising. This camp was no more than hours old. Whoever had stayed here had left at dawn, perhaps the very moment the cry was heard. He stood and looked around. For the first time, he caught a faint sound beyond the trees. It was not the cry, but a whisper, like breath carried by the wind. It was soft, almost human, yet strange enough to send a chill through his body. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He knew now that the colony was not alone. Something was moving through the forest, and it was not here by chance. The cry at dawn had been a warning, and the question was clear: was it a warning of danger, or a call for help? As the scouts regrouped, Rowan looked to the horizon where the colony lay in the distance. "We will report this to the governor. No word of this reaches the colonists until we understand what we face. Daniel, you stay with me. Your eyes are sharper than most, and I will need them." Daniel nodded, but his thoughts were heavy. The sound still echoed in his mind, a cry that would not leave him. He knew this was only the beginning. Something was coming to Terra 9, and the colony would soon have to choose whether to fear it or face it. The sun climbed higher, but the morning no longer felt bright. The cry at dawn had broken the peace of Terra 9, and from that moment forward, nothing would be the same. The scouts returned to the colony before noon. Dust clung to their boots and their faces were tight with unease. The governor of Terra 9, a cautious man named Halden, listened as Rowan gave his report. The strange prints, the torn cloth, the fresh ashes, signs that others were moving in the forest. Halden frowned, his hand resting on the wooden table in the council hall. "We cannot afford unknown visitors. If they are raiders, they will bring ruin to us. If they are refugees, they may still draw danger behind them. Terra 9 was built to stand apart from the wars of the stars. We must not let outsiders bring trouble to our soil." Daniel stood at the back of the hall, silent but alert. His eyes never left the governor, though his thoughts returned to the sound at dawn. It had not been the voice of raiders. It carried sorrow, not cruelty. He was certain of that. Rowan leaned closer to Halden. "I will take men into the forest again at dusk. We will capture whoever is hiding there. Then we will know the truth." That night, Daniel joined the patrol once more. The forest was dark and thick, the air heavy with the scent of moss and soil. The soldiers moved carefully, their rifles ready. Daniel's heart beat faster with every step. He knew they were not alone. They reached the clearing where the ashes had been found. Rowan signaled for silence. Then it came a rustle, quick and sharp. Figures moved between the trees. Daniel raised his weapon, but something in the way they moved made him pause. They were not charging. They were fleeing. "Hold," Daniel whispered, but Rowan's order came louder. "Surround them." The soldiers spread out, their boots thudding against the earth. Then the figures stepped into the moonlight, and for the first time Daniel saw them clearly. They were humanoids. Taller than humans, with long limbs and pale skin that seemed almost to glow under the faint light. Their faces carried both sharpness and grace, their eyes bright and weary. They were dressed in worn clothes, stitched from rough fabric, torn and dirty from travel. Some carried small packs, while others clutched tools that looked more like relics than weapons. At their front was a woman. Her hair was dark and braided loosely over her shoulder. Her eyes were steady though her face showed exhaustion. She raised her hand slowly, showing she carried no weapon. "We mean no harm," she said, her voice soft yet clear. The soldiers hesitated. Rowan stepped forward, his rifle still aimed. "Who are you? Why are you in our forest?" The woman bowed her head slightly. "My name is Myra. These are my people. We are not enemies. We are runaways." Daniel felt a strange pull at her words. He lowered his weapon, though Rowan gave him a sharp look. Myra continued before anyone could speak. "We fled from the empire that hunts us. We seek only shelter, a place where machines cannot find us. Please, we beg you. Do not send us away." Rowan's eyes narrowed. "Machines?" Myra nodded. "They were sent after us when we escaped. They follow our kind wherever we go. If they find us here, they will bring war to your colony. The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Daniel stepped forward. If what you say is true, then you have brought danger with you already. Myra turned her gaze to him. Her eyes, though tired, held a deep strength. Danger follows us whether we run or hide. But we did not choose to be hunted. We only chose to live free. Daniel studied her. There was no lie in her tone. He thought of the cry at dawn, and he understood now. It had not been a warning of attack. It had been a plea. Rowan signaled the soldiers. Bind them. We will take them to the colony. The governor will decide their fate. The humanoids did not resist. They walked in silence, heads lowered, though Daniel noticed Myra watching the trees as if expecting shadows to move at any moment. Her words about machines lingered in his mind. When they returned, the colonists gathered to see the strangers. Whispers spread through the crowd. Some called the humanoids spies. Others muttered about curses from the stars. Mothers pulled their children close. Governor Halden came to the square, his expression hard. Why are you here? He demanded. Myra stepped forward. Her voice carried over the crowd. We are hunted slaves. We broke free from chains and fled across the stars. The Empire sends machines to track us. If we are found, they will strike without mercy. We ask for shelter. We ask for a chance to live. The colonists erupted with shouts. Some cried that the strangers should be cast out before war followed. Others pitied them and argued that humanity could not turn away those in need. Daniel's heart pulled him toward Myra's words. He stepped forward and faced the governor. She speaks the truth. I have seen the signs in the forest. The cry we all heard at dawn was theirs. They are not our enemies. If machines come, it is not because of their choice but because they wish to be free. And I believe we should not betray that freedom. The square fell quiet for a moment. Halden looked from Daniel to Myra, his jaw tight. I will allow them to stay for now, under guard. But if danger comes to our colony, it will be their burden to bear. You, Daniel, will watch them closely. If they bring harm to us, their fate will be yours to answer for. Daniel nodded, though he felt the weight of the task. Myra gave him a small nod of gratitude, and for the first time that night, he saw hope in her tired eyes. The colony had taken in the runaways, but trust was thin. The cry at dawn had brought them together, yet it also warned of storms to come. For Daniel, one truth became clear. Terra 9 was no longer just a quiet colony. It had become a crossroad, where humanity would soon face choices that could shape its future forever. The strangers were placed in a guarded camp at the edge of Terra 9's settlement. A fence of steel posts and wire surrounded the area, and soldiers stood watch day and night. Myra and her people accepted the confinement without protest, though Daniel could see the sadness in their eyes. They were free from the Empire, yet still treated like prisoners. The colony itself was restless. Whispers filled the streets, and neighbors argued in the markets. Some feared the humanoids brought danger. Others said turning them away would be a stain on humanity's honor. The cry at dawn had shaken the people, but the presence of outsiders shook them even more. Daniel was assigned to watch over the camp. Each morning he brought food and water with a small team of guards. At first he kept his distance, but he could not ignore his curiosity. The humanoids were unlike any beings he had seen. Their movements were graceful even in exhaustion, and their eyes seemed older than their years. They spoke softly among themselves, often in a language that sounded like flowing water. Yet when Myra spoke to him, her words were steady and clear. On the third morning, Daniel lingered by the fence. Myra approached, her dark braid resting over her shoulder. You are not like the others, she said. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? You listen, she answered simply. The others look at us with fear. You look with questions. Daniel hesitated. Fear is natural. The governor believes you bring danger here. Myra's gaze did not falter. Danger follows us, yes. But it is not of our making. We were taken from our homes long ago. The empire forced us to work in their cities, building their ships and tending their machines. Some accepted, but many of us dreamed of freedom. We escaped, and the empire sent hunters after us. They will never stop, because to them our escape is an insult. They use machines, heartless and tireless, to track us. Daniel studied her face. He could see the truth in her eyes. Why come here? He asked. We did not choose your world, Myra replied. Our ship was damaged in flight. We followed the stars, searching for a place where we might rest. When we landed in your forest, we thought perhaps this land would hold mercy. But mercy is rare in the galaxy. Her words struck Daniel. He thought of the colony's history. Terra 9 itself had once been a place for settlers fleeing from crowded Earth. His own grandparents had come here to escape poverty and war. Was it not the same for these people? Still, suspicion grew inside the colony. Each evening in the square, meetings were held. Farmers spoke of the risk of battle if machines arrived. Merchants worried trade routes would close if the colony gained a reputation for harboring fugitives. Rowan warned that keeping the humanoids might provoke attacks. Governor Halden listened to them all, his face unreadable. We must be wise, he said. Our survival comes first. If sheltering them threatens Terra 9, then we must reconsider. Daniel stood at the edge of these meetings, anger burning in his chest. He wanted to speak, but each time the weight of authority silenced him. When the meeting ended, he walked alone to the edge of the camp. There he found Myra standing by the fence, watching the stars. They do not trust us, she said without turning. Many think you are spies, Daniel admitted. They say you could be working for the Empire, drawing us into war. Myra shook her head. If I wished to bring war to your world, I would not come begging with children and elders. Look at my people, Daniel. Do they look like warriors? We are tired. We are broken. We wish only to live. Daniel looked at the camp. Some of the humanoids sat around a small fire, sharing food quietly. Children leaned against their parents, their eyes wide but calm. He saw no threat there. Only survival. The next morning, trouble sparked. A group of colonists gathered at the gate of the camp, shouting. Send them away, one man cried. They bring ruin to us. My family will not die for strangers. Soldiers pushed the crowd back, but anger hung in the air. Daniel stood between the people and the camp, feeling the weight of both sides pressing against him. Myra's people remained silent, watching through the fence. Later, Daniel spoke with Rowan. Keeping them behind a fence will not calm the colony, he said. It only feeds fear. If you treat them as prisoners, the people will believe they are enemies. Rowan gave him a hard look. And if they are enemies, Daniel? What then? Will you still stand in their defense? Daniel answered without hesitation. I will stand for truth. I have seen them. They are not here to harm us. Rowan did not reply, but Daniel knew the commander remained unconvinced. That night, Daniel returned to the camp once more. Myra met him at the gate. Your people do not want us here, she said softly. Not all, Daniel replied. Some do. But fear is stronger than kindness when danger is near. Myra's eyes lifted to the stars again. Fear is what the Empire wants. They rule through fear. If your people give in to it, then the machines will already have won before they even arrive. Daniel felt the weight of her words. He knew the colony stood on a knife's edge. Trust could unite them, but suspicion could break them apart before the real threat even reached their skies. For now, Myra and her people remained behind the fence. Yet Daniel could sense a storm building beyond the horizon. The cry at dawn had brought strangers to Terra 9, and now the question was not whether danger would come, but whether the colony would stand together when it did. Dawn came again, clear and bright over Terra 9. Farmers opened their doors, and traders rolled their carts into the streets. Yet even in the warmth of the rising sun, unease clung to the colony. The humanoids still sat behind their fence, guarded at every hour, and the colonists still argued whether they were guests or threats. Daniel woke early and stood watch at the edge of the settlement. His eyes scanned the horizon. He had not forgotten Myra's warning. Machines, she had said, followed them. Heartless, tireless machines that would never stop. Her words echoed in his thoughts each time he looked to the sky. As the sun climbed higher, a sound broke the calm. It was faint at first, like the hum of distant thunder. Then it grew louder, sharper, carrying across the land until everyone in the colony heard it. Children covered their ears, and soldiers scrambled to the walls. Daniel's stomach tightened. He knew at once this was not the natural cry they had heard before. This was different. The sky itself seemed to tremble. Rowan shouted from the outpost wall. "Look there! In the east." Daniel turned his gaze. At first, the light of the sun blinded him. Then he saw them dark shapes moving across the sky, their forms sharp and metallic. At least 3 ships, long and narrow, glided above the hills. From their underbellies fell smaller objects that streaked downward like sparks of fire. The colony erupted in alarm. Bells rang, calling people to shelter. Farmers abandoned their carts, and mothers rushed their children indoors. Soldiers grabbed their weapons and rushed to the defenses. Daniel mounted the wall beside Rowan. "They are here," he said. Rowan nodded grimly. "Machines." Just as she warned. The sparks falling from the sky struck the plains beyond the forest. When the dust cleared, metallic figures rose from the ground. They were tall, their bodies made of steel and black plates, their movements smooth yet unnatural. Their eyes glowed with a cold blue light as they scanned the land. Each carried a weapon that hummed with energy. Myra and her people saw them from inside the camp. A wave of fear passed over their faces, yet none of them cried out. They had seen this before. They had lived it for years. Myra pressed against the fence, her eyes locking on Daniel. "You must listen now. If you do not fight, they will tear down your colony. They will not stop with us. To the machines, any who give us shelter are enemies." Daniel turned to Rowan. "She is right. They will not spare us if we hand them over. We are already a target." Rowan's jaw tightened. He looked down at the colonists scrambling in fear. The governor must decide. Governor Halden was rushed to the wall. His face was pale as he watched the machines spread out across the plain, their movements exact and disciplined. "They come for the strangers," he said. "If we give them what they want, perhaps they will leave us in peace." Daniel's chest burned at the words. "They will not leave us in peace. If we surrender these people, we show weakness. They will know we can be bent. Next time, they will come for us. We cannot give them what they want." Halden glared at him. "You speak with boldness, but boldness does not protect lives. Our first duty is to Terra 9. Myra's voice cut across the wall, steady and strong. "If you hand us over, you will lose more than lives. You will lose your freedom. Machines understand no bargain. They only destroy." The colony stood divided. Some shouted for surrender. Others cried out in anger, saying humanity must fight. Fear and courage clashed in the square as the ships hovered above the hills like vultures waiting for the kill. Then a blast shook the ground. One of the machines fired into the earth near the colony walls, sending dust and rock into the air. It was not a direct strike, but a warning. Another followed, closer this time. The message was clear. Surrender or face destruction. Daniel gripped his rifle tightly. His voice rang out above the crowd. If we bow now, we bow forever. We are not slaves. We are not prey. If machines want to take this colony, they will have to fight for every stone. The soldiers around him straightened, their fear hardening into resolve. Rowan looked at him with sharp eyes, then gave a short nod. Prepare the defenses. Halden's face twisted with doubt, but the choice had already been made. The machines would not leave. The colony would not bend. Humanity would stand. Myra stepped forward, her hand pressed against the fence. Release us. Let us fight beside you. We know their tactics. We know their weakness. Rowan hesitated, but Daniel spoke firmly. Unlock the gate. If they wish to fight, then let them fight. We will need every hand. The gate was opened, and Myra led her people out. They stood tall despite their weariness, ready to face the nightmare that had hunted them across the stars. On the horizon, the machines began their march toward Terra 9, their steps heavy and unyielding. The cry at dawn had warned of this moment. Now it had come. Humanity and humanoids stood together, the colony bracing for a storm that would test their courage like never before. The colony of Terra 9 was no longer quiet. Alarms rang through the streets, and families hurried into the shelters dug beneath the main square. Soldiers took positions along the wooden walls and guard towers. The sound of clashing metal and humming engines carried from the plains where the machines gathered in their lines. Governor Halden stood at the center of the colony, his face pale with fear. His mind weighed heavily on one thought: should the colony risk everything for strangers? His hands trembled as he gave orders to secure the gates, but his voice was uncertain. Daniel saw the governor's weakness, and it filled him with anger. He could not bear to see Terra 9 bow to fear. He climbed onto the wall, his rifle slung across his back, and raised his voice so all could hear. People of Terra 9, he called. You hear the machines outside our walls. You see them gathering their weapons. Do you think they will stop if we surrender? No. If we hand over Myra and her people, the machines will not thank us. They will see only weakness. And when they return, it will not be for strangers. It will be for us. The colonists paused in their panic. Many turned their eyes toward him. Daniel's voice carried strength that the governor's did not. He continued, his chest full of fire. Our grandparents came here to escape fear and chains. They built this colony with their hands. They fought against storms, hunger, and beasts of the wild. Did they build it so we could give it away without a fight? No. We are human, and we will stand as humans should. We will not bow. We will not surrender. A murmur spread through the crowd. Soldiers gripped their rifles tighter. Farmers clenched their fists. Merchants who once argued for surrender now looked at the machines with narrowed eyes. Myra stepped forward, her people behind her. Her voice rose clear and strong. We will fight with you. My people know these hunters. We have faced them before. Alone, we fell. Together, we can stand. She lifted her hand and opened her palm. A faint light pulsed from her skin, spreading in waves. Daniel watched in awe as the machines outside the walls twitched, their glowing eyes flickering for a moment. Myra's people raised their hands as well, releasing the same strange energy. Rowan's eyes widened. Sound and light, he said under his breath. This is their weapon. Myra nodded. It will not destroy the machines, but it can weaken their systems. You must strike while they falter. Daniel turned to the soldiers. You hear her. When they rise, we strike. We do not give the machines a single step inside our walls. For the first time, a roar rose from the colonists. Fear gave way to courage. Humanity stood ready. The machines began their march, their feet pounding the earth in perfect rhythm. their glowing eyes fixed on the colony walls. Then, with a signal unseen, they charged. The first wave hit the defenses with heavy fire. Blasts of energy shook the walls, throwing splinters into the air. Soldiers fired back with rifles, their bullets sparking against metal frames. Some machines stumbled but rose again, tireless and unyielding. Myra and her people raised their voices in a cry that shook the dawn. The sound was not like any human voice. It was sharp, strong, and filled with strange power. Light pulsed from their hands, striking the machines in waves. Sparks flew as circuits failed and glowing eyes flickered. Daniel seized the moment. Now! Fire with all you have! The wall erupted with gunfire. Rows of machines fell, their bodies crashing to the earth. Colonists who had never held weapons before stood beside soldiers, throwing stones, hurling burning oil, anything they could lift. Humanity fought with every ounce of strength. Rowan led a charge through the gate, striking at the machines before they could regroup. Daniel ran at his side, rifle blazing. Myra and her people moved with them, their cries weakening the enemy. For the first time, the machines faltered. Their perfect rhythm broke. But the battle was far from won. More machines poured from the ships, their weapons cutting through the earth and walls. Explosions rocked the colony. Fires rose in the streets. The people of Terra 9 fought in smoke and chaos, refusing to yield. Governor Halden hid in the council hall, trembling as the walls shook. He saw through the window the courage of his people and the strangers they once feared. Shame burned in his chest, for he knew leadership did not belong to fear but to resolve. On the battlefield, Daniel fought with grit, his body aching but his spirit unbroken. Every time Myra cried out, the machines faltered, and he struck with precision. Rowan's sword cut through steel joints. Farmers swung axes. Children carried water to the fighters. The whole colony rose as one. Hours passed, and the sun climbed higher. The ground was littered with broken machines. The survivors pulled back, their glowing eyes dimming. For the first time since the ships appeared, silence returned to the plains. The colony stood, bruised and battered but alive. The walls were broken, the streets scarred, yet the people's hearts were stronger than ever. Myra lowered her hands, her energy fading. She looked at Daniel with gratitude. You did not surrender. You chose to stand. Daniel nodded, his chest heavy with exhaustion. We stood because we are human. And when we stand together, nothing can break us. The colonists gathered in the square, lifting their voices in cheer. For a moment, Terra 9 felt like the center of the galaxy. Humanity had faced the machines and held its ground. But as Daniel looked to the horizon, he knew this was only the beginning. The machines would return. The Empire would not forget. Yet for now, hope burned brighter than fear. Humanity had shown its strength, and Terra 9 was ready to face whatever came next. The night after the first clash was long and restless. Fires still smoldered in the streets of Terra 9, and the cries of the wounded filled the air. Soldiers repaired what they could of the walls, while colonists carried water and food to those too weak to stand. The ground outside the colony was littered with broken machine parts, their twisted frames glowing faintly in the dark. Daniel sat on the wall, his rifle across his knees. His body ached, but his eyes stayed sharp on the horizon. He knew the battle was not finished. The ships in the distance were still there, like shadows against the stars. The machines had pulled back, but they were not gone. They were waiting for dawn. Myra stood beside him, her face pale from exhaustion. The power she and her people had used had drained them, but her spirit had not broken. They will strike again, she said softly. At first light, they will come with more force than before. Daniel nodded. Then we will meet them at dawn. We will not give them this land. As the night passed, Rowan prepared the soldiers. Trenches were dug outside the broken gates. Traps were laid with oil and spikes. Every able colonist was armed with whatever weapon they could carry. Even children helped by carrying stones to the walls and filling buckets with water. Humanity had turned fear into strength. Before sunrise, the governor came to the square. His face no longer held the same weakness as before. He looked at the weary faces of his people and spoke with a voice steadier than Daniel had ever heard. "I was wrong," he admitted. "I thought fear would save us, but fear only destroys. You have shown me courage. Today, Terra 9 will not bow. We will fight, and we will live free." A cheer rose from the crowd. Daniel felt a surge of pride. Humanity was ready. The sky grew pale as the first light touched the horizon. Then it came again, that terrible hum, louder than before. The ships above the hills opened their bays, and dozens of machines descended in waves. Their heavy bodies struck the ground, and their glowing eyes fixed on the colony. They marched in perfect lines, their weapons raised, their steps shaking the earth. Myra and her people gathered at the front lines. They raised their hands, their voices blending into a single sharp cry that cut through the dawn. Light spread from their bodies, waves of sound and energy rolling across the plain. The machines staggered, their rhythm breaking. "Now," Daniel shouted. "Fight with all you have." The colony roared to life. Rifles cracked from the walls, arrows and stones flew, and fire bombs exploded among the machines. Trenches lit up with flames as oil traps ignited, forcing the enemy into chaos. The humanoids' cry grew stronger, and machines fell to the earth, their systems broken by the strange power. Daniel leapt from the wall, charging with Rowan and a group of soldiers. His rifle blazed as he cut down machine after machine. Sparks flew, metal clashed against stone, and the ground shook beneath the battle. Rowan fought like a storm, his blade tearing through steel joints, his voice steady as he called orders. Myra fought beside Daniel, her power striking waves of machines. Each cry from her lips sent pulses of light that cracked their armor. Though she stumbled from weakness, she never stopped. Her people stood with her, turning their sorrow into strength. But the machines were endless. For every one that fell, more rose from the ships. They fired beams that tore through walls and crushed buildings. The colony burned in places, and still the people fought. Daniel's arms ached, his clothes torn, his body bruised. Yet his heart would not yield. He remembered his words on the wall, the promise that humans would not bow. That promise burned in him now, pushing him forward when his body screamed to rest. At the height of battle, the machines brought forth a larger figure, taller than the rest, its frame armored in black steel. Its glowing eyes fixed on Myra. With a deep hum, it raised its weapon, ready to strike her down. Daniel saw it and ran, pushing past fallen metal and broken stone. He fired his rifle, but the shots only sparked against the thick armor. The machine lifted its weapon higher, the hum growing into a deadly charge. Myra turned, her eyes wide. She raised her hands, but her strength was nearly gone. Daniel threw himself between her and the machine, his rifle raised though he knew it would not be enough. At that moment, Rowan charged from the side, his blade glowing from the heat of battle. With a fierce cry, he struck the machine at its joints, cutting deep. Sparks exploded as the giant staggered. Myra gathered the last of her strength and released a final cry, her voice sharp as thunder. The light burst from her hands and struck the machine's chest. With a shudder, it collapsed, crashing into the earth. For a heartbeat, silence fell. Then the colony roared, their courage renewed. The machines faltered, their lines breaking. Together, humans and humanoids surged forward, driving the enemy back. By the time the sun rose high, the battlefield was covered with broken steel. The ships above trembled, then slowly turned away, retreating into the sky. The machines were defeated, at least for now. Daniel stood among his people, his chest rising with heavy breath. Myra leaned against him, her strength nearly gone, but her eyes still burning with determination. Rowan wiped his blade and looked to the horizon. The battle at dawn was over, and Terra 9 still stood. Yet Daniel knew the Empire would not forget this day. More battles would come. But for now, humanity had faced the storm and proved its strength. The cry at dawn was no longer a sound of fear. It was a call of defiance, and it belonged to both humans and humanoids alike. The battlefield lay quiet when the smoke finally cleared. Metal fragments covered the ground, broken machines scattered like bones of fallen beasts. The people of Terra 9 stood together, their faces weary but their hearts burning with pride. They had survived what many thought impossible. The machines had been forced to retreat, and for the first time in years, hope filled the air. Daniel walked slowly across the ruined streets, past walls that had been shattered and homes reduced to ash. Yet even among the ruins, he saw children helping to gather wood, mothers tending the wounded, and fathers rebuilding walls with their bare hands. Humanity had been tested, and it had endured. Myra leaned on a staff for support, her strength not yet returned. Still, she stood tall, her eyes scanning the colony with quiet admiration. She had seen her people fight side by side with humans, and she knew something had changed forever. No longer were they only survivors hiding from an empire. Now, they were allies, bound together by courage. Rowan approached Daniel, his armor dented and covered in ash. He looked tired, yet his voice carried steady strength. We held the ground, but this is not the end. The Empire will send more. Stronger forces, larger ships. We have bought time, nothing more. Daniel nodded, his gaze fixed on the rising sun. Time is enough. With time, we can prepare. With time, we can show them that Terra 9 will not be broken. The governor arrived then, surrounded by colonists. His face held none of the fear it once carried. Instead, he bowed his head toward Daniel, Myra, and Rowan. You gave us the strength to stand. I was blind before, but today I saw what courage means. From this day forward, Terra 9 will never bow to chains. We will stand as one. The crowd behind him cheered, their voices strong even though their bodies were tired. It was no longer a colony divided by fear and doubt. It was a people united by survival and determination. Later that day, they buried the fallen with honor. Stones were placed over graves, and words were spoken for each brave soul who gave their life. Myra sang a low, soft song in her own tongue, her voice trembling but filled with respect. Daniel felt the weight of loss in his chest, but he also felt a quiet pride. The dead had not fallen in vain. They had given Terra 9 a chance to live. As night came, fires burned across the colony, but they were no longer fires of war. They were fires of rebuilding. Families sat together, eating what little food remained, sharing stories of the battle and the moments when courage rose above fear. Myra sat beside Daniel near one of the fires. She looked tired but peaceful. Your people fight with more than weapons, she said. They fight with heart. That is something the machines cannot understand. Daniel smiled faintly. And your people fight with spirit. Together, we showed them what they never expected. Rowan joined them, his expression thoughtful. This victory will spread. Other colonies will hear of it. Humans across the stars will know that Terra 9 stood against the machines and lived. That knowledge will awaken courage in others. Myra's eyes shone in the firelight. Then the cry at dawn will not be only ours. It will become a call across the stars. Daniel looked toward the horizon where the Empire's ships had fled. He knew they would return, but he no longer feared them. The machines had seen something today that could not be measured in numbers or weapons. They had seen human defiance, and it had shaken them. The next morning, as the sun rose, Daniel stood on the wall again, just as he had before the great battle. The sky was clear, painted with colors of gold and red. The ruins of the battlefield stretched before him, but beyond the broken ground was the promise of a future. Myra joined him, her strength slowly returning. She placed her hand against the stone and said quietly, "This world is worth protecting." Daniel nodded. "It is. And we will protect it? Not just with weapons, but with hope." Behind them, the colony stirred to life. People carried wood to rebuild homes, others worked in the fields to plant new crops, and children laughed as they ran through the streets. Life was returning, stronger than before. Rowan climbed the wall, his eyes sweeping across the horizon. One day, the Empire will come again. But when they do, we will be ready. We are no longer only survivors. We are defenders. Daniel's gaze hardened, but his heart felt lighter than ever. And when they come, they will hear our answer. They will hear the cry at dawn. The three of them stood together, watching the sun climb higher, its light breaking through the smoke that still lingered in the air. For the first time in years, dawn felt like a beginning rather than a warning. The cry at dawn had changed. It was no longer the sound of fear. It was the voice of courage, of unity, and of freedom. And it would echo not only across Terra 9, but across every world where humans and allies refused to bow. The machines might return, the Empire might rise again, but Terra 9 had already written its story in fire and steel. Humanity had proved its strength. Humanity had stood tall when the storm came. And as long as the sun rose, as long as dawn broke the night, the cry at dawn would rise with it, a promise that freedom would never die.